Hi everyone, I'm Jason. Since I'm a collector of US aircraft gun sights from World War II, I was once asked whether the gun sights really mattered, as in, does a better gun sight make for a better plane? The short answer is that it's really hard to say. And if you've ever seen in the online forums the heated debates among warbird enthusiasts over which plane was better, you know exactly why. It's because the success of an airplane is not just a factor of the aircraft and its equipment, but is dependent on many other factors. You have the pilot, his skill and experience, his squadron's skill and experience, his division's training, tactics, intelligence, and logistics. And then, of course, there's the enemy you're flying against, his aircraft and equipment, and all of those other factors for him as well. So, since we can't isolate out the impact of the gun sight from all of those other factors, there's just no way to make a definitive case for the importance of a specific gun sight. Period. Case closed. That all being said, though, indulge me for a few minutes with two case studies that I think illustrate the importance of good gun sights. Let's start with arguably the worst U.S. fighter of the war, the Brewster Buffalo. This fighter did not have a successful career with the U.S. Navy. It only saw service in the earliest battles and with poor results. At the Battle of Midway, a Marine squadron of Buffaloes took on a far superior number of Zeros and lost 13 of 20 Buffaloes with only 1 0 kill to show for it. The Buffalo was quickly removed from frontline service after that. But elsewhere in the world, the Buffalo was holding its own. The British successfully used it in Burma and Malay against the Japanese, as did the Dutch in the East Indies. There were Buffalo aces to be found among the British, Australian, and New Zealanders. But Finland topped them all. The Finnish Air Force produced 36 Buffalo aces. The Finnish 24th Squadron destroyed 477 Soviet airplanes to 19 Buffalo losses, an impressive 26-to-1 kill ratio. The highest scoring non-German fighter ace of World War II, Ilmari Utilainen, scored 34 of his 94 victories in a Brewster Buffalo, and he spoke highly of it as the gentleman's touring plane. For comparison, his 34 kills in a Buffalo would tie him with the U.S. Navy's top ace of the war, David McCampbell, whose 34 kills all came in a Hellcat. So why such a difference between the U.S. Navy's Buffalo and everyone else's? Well, let's put all of those other factors aside and just look at the gun sight. The U.S. Navy's Buffalo used the Mark III telescopic gun sight, the same that was used on Dauntless dive bombers at the time. It had the inherent challenge of requiring the pilot to lean forward, close one eye, and press his eye against the telescope. This may have worked well on Dauntless's dive-bombing carriers, but this did not make for good dogfighting. But the other countries chose better gun sights for their Buffaloes. The RAF used a simple ring and bead, and later the excellent Mark II reflector gun sight. The Finns used a ring sight, later a reflector sight, such as the German Rev E3C or this Finnish-made reflector sight, the THM-44KK. Now, let's look at a second case study. This time, the best U.S. fighter of the war, the P-51D Mustang. We've all heard the story. The P-51D showed up in the skies over Europe in mid-1944 and helped establish air superiority. It was the great new plane. A great plane, yes, but definitely not new. The early model P-51s and its ground attack version, the A-36 Apache, had been around for a couple of years before that, and the RAF had been using the Mustang since just 1 month after Pearl Harbor. So what turned it from a lackluster laggard into a legendary fighter? Well, we all know the answer to that too. It was the switch to the Merlin two-stage supercharged engines for high-altitude flight in the P-51D. But there was another important equipment change that happened around that same time, specifically on the D-20 production block, and that was the switch from the mediocre N-3B gun sight, or the upgraded N-9 gun sight, to the revolutionary K-14 gyroscopic gun sight, the Ace Maker. For the first time, a fighter pilot didn't have to mentally calculate his deflection. All he had to do was dial in his enemy's plane, line up, and shoot. A great gun sight, a great engine, and a great airplane all came together at the same time to make for legendary performance. So there are the facts, the worst and best US fighters of the war and their gun sights. You can decide for yourself how important good gun sights were in these cases. Some of the resources referenced in this video can be seen here. Thank you for watching, and feel free to contact me with questions.